A mother who lied about her daughter's illnesses for years. A young woman who discovered the truth too late and paid the ultimate price. This is the real story of Gypsy Rose Blanchard, a case that shocked the nation and raised painful questions about trust, abuse, and the lengths we'll go to survive. Imagine believing your mother is saving you, only to find out she is doing the exact opposite. Gypsy Rose Blanchard spent her childhood confined to a wheelchair, hooked to feeding tubes, and forced to undergo surgeries she did not need. Only when she turned 23 did the horrifying truth come to light. Her mother, Dee Dee Blanchard, had been fabricating illnesses for years, a condition known as Munchausen by proxy. Today's story will walk you through every verified fact, from Gypsy's early childhood to her shocking confession, and explore how this betrayal led to a crime that riveted viewers across America. You may be wondering, how could a devoted mother do this to her own child? And how does someone trapped by lies find the strength to fight back? Over the next 12 minutes, we will unravel the complete timeline, share first-hand accounts, and examine the lessons we can all learn. Let's begin at the very start. Gypsy Rose Blanchard was born on July 27, 1991, in Golden, Missouri, to Dee Dee Blanchard and Rod Blanchard. From infancy, Dee Dee insisted her daughter was gravely ill, suffering from leukemia, muscular dystrophy, epilepsy, and various other ailments. Photographs from those years show Gypsy in a wheelchair, wearing an oxygen mask, and connected to a feeding tube. In reality, medical records and later expert testimony confirm that Gypsy was a healthy child. Instead of seeking a second opinion, doctors were misled by Dee Dee's convincing narratives and falsified records. Dee Dee repeatedly told medical teams that Gypsy's immune system was so fragile that even a mild cold could kill her. This led to unnecessary treatments. Gypsy underwent surgeries to remove healthy salivary glands, had teeth extracted, and endured countless blood tests. By the time she reached elementary school, Gypsy was dependent on a feeding tube and forced to wear leg braces, even though she could walk on her own. Neighbors recall Dee Dee showering local news outlets with stories of her miracle child who beat cancer multiple times. Local charities and national organizations donated wheelchairs, therapy sessions, and thousands of dollars in relief funds. Family friends, overwhelmed by sympathy, rarely questioned Dee Dee's accounts. Meanwhile, Gypsy learned to play the role of a chronically ill child, an act that Dee Dee insisted she maintain at all times. For much of her youth, Gypsy never experienced a normal childhood, no sleepovers, no school outings, and no chance to make friends. Whenever the idea of ending school came up, Dee Dee claimed that public germs would kill her daughter. In reality, Gypsy longed for the smallest taste of independence. As a teenager, she briefly tried to walk without leg braces and discovered she could run short distances. But Dee Dee caught her and locked her back into the wheelchair, insisting it was for Gypsy's own safety. By the time Gypsy was 15, she had been homeschooled for years. Dee Dee controlled every aspect of her life, what she ate, when she slept, and how she interacted with the outside world. Medical appointments became a daily ritual. Each new specialist reinforced the false narrative. Even though some doctors grew suspicious, Dee Dee would threaten to find another physician if questioned too closely. Around 2012, Gypsy managed to obtain access to the internet under Dee Dee's watchful eye. Using a secret username, she began to chat with strangers in online forums dedicated to rare diseases. For the first time, Gypsy encountered people who questioned the validity of her conditions. It was there that she met Nicholas Godejohn, a dog groomer living in Wisconsin who believed her stories of abuse and illness without hesitation. To Gypsy, Nick was the only person who seemed to care about her true well-being, though he had no idea how deeply entangled Dee Dee's lies had become. With each passing year, Gypsy's resentment built. She watched her friends at school grow up, while she remained stuck in a world of hospital rooms and medical equipment. Her mother told her that the outside world would only do her harm. As a result, Gypsy never learned to drive or hold a job. Her only window into normal life were the threads of online conversations that planted the first seeds of escape. In early 2014, Gypsy and Nick began communicating regularly, sharing their hopes, fears, and dreams. She confided in him that her mother was manipulative and abusive, feeding her medications that made her genuinely ill. Broken by her mother's emotional cruelty, Gypsy told Nick, "I would give anything to be free." Nick, feeling a deep sense of protectiveness, replied, "I'll do whatever it takes to rescue you." Over the next year, their chats grew more urgent. Gypsy sent pictures proving she could walk and cook for herself when her mother wasn't watching. As she turned 22, Gypsy's desperation peaked. She realized that Dee Dee would never let her go, no matter how many times she pleaded. In March 2015, Gypsy told Nick that Dee Dee had booked a trip to Springfield, Missouri, supposedly for medical appointments, leaving Gypsy alone at home for several days. That was the moment they decided on a plan. Nick would travel to Missouri under the guise of visiting family, enter the house, and kill Dee Dee. In their final text exchange before the homicide, Gypsy wrote, "She is going to kill me someday. Please just help me end this." And Nick replied, "I'll be there, trust me." In reality, neither knew what lay ahead. Both believed they were acting in Gypsy's best interest. On the evening of June 25, 2015, Dee Dee left the Blanchard home in Springfield, Missouri, around 6 p.m. to visit relatives. She told friends she would be gone for 5 days. Feeling a flicker of control, Gypsy waited until late that night. At approximately 9:30 p.m., Nick arrived at the Blanchard residence. A neighbor later testified to hearing loud music playing, muffling any sounds of violence. Nick entered through a back door Gypsy had unlocked. He found Dee Dee asleep in her bedroom and used a knife to stab her multiple times. After ensuring she was dead, he encountered a 150-pound stray dog in the backyard and, terrified that the animal would alert neighbors, stabbed it to death as well. At roughly 10:04 p.m., a nearby Ring camera, installed at a neighbor's home, captured a figure covered in blood limping away from the Blanchard house. The next morning, on June 26th, neighbors noticed blood-stained footprints on the driveway and found Nick's car parked outside. Breaking their shared silence, Gypsy called 911 at 8:15 a.m., sobbing, "My boyfriend did something horrible to my mom. I came home and I'm covered in blood." Police arrived within minutes to find Dee Dee's body and quickly apprehended Nick inside the home, where he was still bleeding and attempting to clean himself. During the initial investigation, authorities treated Gypsy as a victim. She was taken to a local hospital for evaluation. While at the hospital, she maintained the story that Nick alone committed the murder. Detectives noted inconsistencies, new scratches on her arms, dishonesty about when Nick arrived, and an oddly calm demeanor given the circumstances. Blood evidence and cell phone records contradicted her narrative. On June 27, 2015, prosecutors charged Nick Godejohn with first-degree murder. He pleaded not guilty at his initial hearing. Meanwhile, the Greene County Sheriff's Office interviewed Gypsy and uncovered text messages in which she encouraged Nick to take care of it, code to kill her mother. By July 1, 2015, medical records and digital forensics proved Gypsy's complicity. She was charged with second-degree murder and held without bail at the Lawrence County Jail. As the community reeled from the revelation, neighbors recalled seeing signs of Dee Dee's control, Gypsy leaving home only when accompanied by her mother, rarely invited to public events, and always underfoot in a wheelchair. Many struggled to reconcile the image of a doting mother with the truth of years of lies and emotional abuse. Gypsy's plea hearing took place on October 28, 2016. Facing a possible life sentence, she agreed to a plea deal, pleading guilty to second-degree murder in exchange for a 10-year prison sentence with the possibility of parole after serving 85% of her term. At sentencing, Greene County Circuit Judge Michael Maloney acknowledged that Gypsy was both victim and perpetrator. She was manipulated for years by her mother, yet she chose to kill. On November 2, 2016, Gypsy was formally sentenced and transferred to the Chillicothe Correctional Center in Missouri. Nick Godejohn's trial began in November 2018. Prosecutors presented grisly evidence, crime scene photos showing blood spatter, murder implements, and the bludgeoned dog's body. Chat logs revealed Nick's eagerness and willingness. His defense argued he genuinely believed he was rescuing Gypsy from abuse. On November 16, 2018, a jury found him guilty of first-degree murder and armed criminal action. He was sentenced on March 2, 2019, to life in prison without the possibility of parole. While incarcerated, Gypsy earned her high school diploma, studied cosmetology, and wrote letters describing her struggle to reconcile guilt with relief at being free of her mother's control. In December 2023, having served 8.5 years, Gypsy was granted parole. She was released to a halfway house in Louisiana on December 28, 2023. Since her release, Gypsy has spoken publicly about her experience, warning others about the dangers of medical abuse. She launched a YouTube channel to share her story, emphasizing the importance of mental health support for children. At a parole hearing, psychologist Teresa Shaver testified that Dee Dee's behavior fit the profile of Munchausen syndrome by proxy, a caregiver fabricating or inducing illness in a dependent to gain admiration and attention. Experts point to several red flags: a child with numerous, unexplained medical issues despite contradictory test results, a caregiver who insists on multiple invasive procedures and isolates the child from peers, regular donations and media attention that feed the caregiver's need for sympathy. Gypsy's case underscores how a child's trust can be exploited to the extreme. Many viewers ask, how did no one intervene sooner? In 2009, Gypsy's pediatrician became suspicious and canceled home visits, urging Dee Dee to consult an independent specialist. Dee Dee simply moved Gypsy to another physician. No child welfare agency discovered definitive evidence until after Dee Dee's murder. Today, Gypsy partners with child advocacy groups, urging stronger oversight and more rigorous checks when a child presents with rare or mysterious ailments. She emphasizes that even well-intentioned medical professionals must remain vigilant when a parent or caregiver appears unusually invested in their child's illness. The Gypsy Rose Blanchard case is a stark reminder that not all abuse leaves visible scars. It challenges us to trust our instincts and speak up when something doesn't feel right, especially for older viewers who may have raised children or cared for grandchildren. Thank you for staying with us through every detail. If you learned something new or found this information valuable, please like this video and subscribe for more true crime stories grounded in fact. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What red flag would you look for if you suspected someone was being manipulated? Stay safe, stay informed, and remember, knowledge can save lives. 4 bright college students, 1 peaceful town, and a single November night that changed everything. In the early hours of November 13th, 2022, Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogan, Zaina Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin were stabbed to death in their rented house on King Road, just off the University of Idaho campus. Nearly 3 years later, the case is heading toward a death penalty trial that the entire nation will be watching. Today, we will walk through the verified facts, the painstaking investigation, and the road that lies ahead. Moscow, Idaho, population 25,000, sits amid the wheat-colored hills of the Palouse. It is a town where people leave porch lights on for neighbors and greet one another by name at the farmer's market. Kaylee and Madison, both 21, had been best friends since 6th grade. They loved road trips, golden retriever selfies, and late-night mozzarella sticks. 20-year-old Zaina, quick-witted and fearless, majored in marketing. Ethan, also 20, was a triplet and an easygoing sports management major who adored the outdoors. Their lives were ordinary, full of promise, and over far too soon. Saturday, November 12, 2022, was the first big weekend after midterms. Kaylee and Madison shared beer-tasting flights downtown, then appeared on a food truck webcam at 1:56 a.m. Zaina and Ethan went to a Sigma Chi party and stopped for a late-night drive-thru. Digital records confirm a 4 a.m. DoorDash order for Zaina. At roughly 4:04, a roommate, referred to in court documents as DM, heard sobbing and opened her door to glimpse a man dressed in black with distinctive bushy eyebrows leaving through the sliding glass door. The house then fell silent. Just before noon, worried friends arrived and called 911. Responding officers found multiple stab wounds on all 4 victims, defensive injuries on 2, and a tan knife sheath lying next to Madison. Initial police statements reassured the community there was no immediate danger. But 3 uneasy days later, authorities reversed that statement. Hundreds of students packed bags early for Thanksgiving break. Some parents drove through the night to bring their children home. Behind the scenes, detectives traced 22,000 registered white Hyundai Elantras, logged 9,500 tips, and processed 113 pieces of physical evidence. Within 5 weeks, they focused on a 2015 Elantra belonging to Bryan Christopher Kohberger, a 28-year-old PhD criminology student, living 10 miles away in Pullman, Washington. Surveillance video showed that car circling King Road 4 times between 3:29 and 4:04 a.m., then speeding away at 4:20. Cell tower data later revealed the same phone had pinged near the victim's house at least 23 times before the murders. FBI agents tailed Kohberger across the country to his parents' home in Pennsylvania and arrested him on December 30th, 2022. A trash pull outside that home produced DNA that matched the sheath clasp found beside Madison. 4 days later, Kohberger stood before an Idaho judge, refused to enter a plea, and had a not guilty plea entered on his behalf. In May 2023, a grand jury indicted him on 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of felony burglary. Judge Stephen Hippler has ruled that 3 pivotal items are admissible evidence: the DNA on the knife sheath, surveillance images of the white Elantra, and Amazon records showing Kohberger purchased a K-bar knife and sheath 8 months before the murders. The defense fought hard to exclude each piece, but rulings issued in spring 2025 went against them. For the first time in Idaho, investigators used investigative genetic genealogy. The microscopic sample from the sheath produced a family tree lead within days, pointing squarely to the Kohberger line. The defense argues contamination and privacy concerns, yet the judge determined the science meets legal standards. Prosecutors described the statistical match as 1 in 5 octillion. Despite the mountain of data, prosecutors still cannot say why the killings happened. Forensic specialists, including Dr. Carol Lieberman, suggest fantasies of power or deep-seated rejection, but those remain theories, not confirmed evidence. Jurors will need a motive before they even consider the death penalty. Idaho is one of the few states that still execute by lethal injection. Prosecutors confirmed in May 2025 that they will pursue death if Kohberger is convicted. The defense cited autism and prejudicial publicity in an attempt to remove the death penalty option. Judge Hippler denied that motion, yet allowed autism to be mentioned later as mitigation. Jury selection on July 30th, 2025, is expected to probe every prospective juror's feelings about capital punishment. Unless further delays arise, jury selection begins July 30th and opening statements start August 11th, 2025. The court has cleared 12 weeks for testimony, taking the trial into early November. Cameras will be allowed, though certain exhibits, like the full 911 tape, may remain sealed. The families of Kaylee and Madison plan to attend every day. Ethan's siblings will rotate so one can remain on campus. No voice is louder than Kaylee's father, Steve Goncalves. "We've got to get this case over," he told reporters. "Let's stop playing delay tactics and get it done." In a written statement, the family said they are praying for no more postponements and feel a little closer to justice with every denied motion. 2 roommates survived, identified in court only as DM and BF. One saw a masked man pass her in the hallway and freeze before exiting. Judge Hippler has restricted release of their text messages and the entire 911 recording. Expect the defense to spotlight unidentified male DNA also found in the house and argue that investigators rushed to judgment. The state will counter with what they call a mosaic case. No single piece proves guilt alone, but together they form an unbroken chain. Media leak allegations and a forthcoming true crime book have already prompted motions to delay. Hippler has so far kept the calendar on track. In the aftermath, the university improved lighting, added late-night escorts, and created permanent counseling funds. Enrollment dipped 4% in 2023, but rebounded by 2024, when a memorial garden opened and scholarships in each victim's name were endowed. Many of us remember waving goodbye as our own children drove off to college, trusting they would be safe. The Moscow murders shattered that illusion. An off-campus rental, a trusted friend group, a locked door, none of it stopped a determined intruder. Layer in rideshare footage, doorcam videos, and social media breadcrumbs, and we see a modern crime that combines digital surveillance with an almost old-fashioned knife attack. That collision of past and present fear is exactly why millions of women over 50 keep tuning in. If this careful, fact-based walkthrough speaks to you, please tap subscribe so you will not miss our live updates once jury selection begins. You can also share this episode with a sister, a book club friend, or anyone who values compassionate true crime storytelling. Your support tells YouTube's algorithm that integrity still matters on this platform. Investigators rebuilt a virtual map from 5 security camera angles, showing the Elantra's path in 3-second increments. Phone tower data placed Kohberger near the house at least a dozen late-night occasions in the weeks before the murders, and completely offline during the killing window. Prosecutors will argue that phone silence was a deliberate attempt to avoid detection, digital camouflage, if you will. Videos show that car making 3 slow passes on King Road, then accelerating away at 4:20 a.m. Fibers lifted from its driver's seat reportedly match carpet fibers in the hallway near Xana's bedroom. The defense insists the Elantra is common on campus. The state calls it the getaway vehicle. Stories like this are heavy. If you feel your shoulders tighten, hit pause, pour a cup of tea, or step outside for fresh air. When you are ready, come back and press play. Self-care isn't weakness, it is wisdom. Major outlets have aired primetime specials: CBS, 48 Hours, NBC, Dateline, and a BBC World Service documentary. The Guardian publishes weekly analyses, News Nation's Bryan live streams each hearing, and YouTube channels, from legal analyst Emily D. Baker to mother of 3 podcasters, dissect every filing. The saturation can feel overwhelming, yet it proves this story touches something universal: the fragile line between ordinary life and unthinkable violence. College campuses nationwide have responded. Many now offer free personal safety apps, emergency blue light upgrades, and safe ride shuttles after dark. Parents and grandparents, consider an annual safety talk. Does your student know local non-emergency dispatch numbers? Have they enabled 2-factor authentication on social apps? A 5-minute check-in can plant habits that last a lifetime. Dr. Carol Lieberman notes that knife attacks require proximity and emotional investment. They are seldom impulsive. Offenders often fantasize for months, sometimes years, before acting, escalating from voyeurism to violence when resentment meets opportunity. Investigators say Kohberger's internet history included late-night searches on serial killers and knife lethality, data the jury is likely to hear in detail. Legal scholars predict the defense will challenge chain of custody on both DNA and phone data, perhaps suggest alternate perpetrators whose details remain sealed. Prosecutors will respond that each link, DNA, video, cell phone pings, reinforces the next. Remember, in capital cases, doubt can be as small as one unexplained shadow. If the jury convicts, a second phase will decide between life without parole and execution. If reasonable doubt prevails, Kohberger walks free, an outcome the families say they are prepared to face, however painful. Justice here is not vengeance. It is a transparent, lawful process that can withstand appeal. Opening statements will outline graphic injuries. The 9/11 recording, if allowed, may reduce the gallery to silence. Family impact statements could bring jurors to tears. When those moments arrive, choose your viewing sources wisely. Thumbnails shouting, "New shock twist," rarely honor the dignity of the victims. Before we close, let me speak directly to you, the mothers, grandmothers, and aunties who understand that crime wounds entire circles of love. If today's narrative moved you, please add your voice in the comments. Share a memory of guiding a young adult through college, or send a message of support to the Chapin, Kernodle, Mogan, and Goncalves families. Click subscribe and ring the bell so you'll receive our live stream alerts during jury selection. Every thoughtful comment pushes the algorithm toward respectful discussion. Thank you. A quiet college house, 4 extinguished futures, and a long legal journey still ahead. We will follow every step, fact-checked, compassionate, and clear. Hold your loved ones close tonight, stay curious, and I will meet you in the next chapter. 4 young women, their bodies discovered along a quiet stretch of shoreline, and a town forever changed by unimaginable loss. In the spring of 2010, the first victims' remains were found at Gilgo Beach, on Long Island. Over the next 18 months, law enforcement discovered the remains of 6 more women, each carefully concealed, each carrying a story nobody yet understood. Today, nearly 15 years later, the man accused of these killings stands on the brink of trial. I invite you to join me as we trace the facts of the Gilgo Beach murders, honor the lives taken, and explore the relentless investigation that may finally bring justice to the victims and their families. Megan Waterman was 23 when she went missing from Boston in early July 2007. She was working as an escort, an occupation that exposed her to danger, but earned her enough to support her two young children. A year later, in August 2008, her partial remains were discovered near Gilgo Beach. Initially, investigators did not connect her to the later cases. They believed her death was isolated. But in March 2010, a jogger found a human torso wrapped in plastic near Ocean Parkway, just south of Gilgo Beach State Park. That discovery started a chain reaction that would uncover a serialized pattern of violence. Within days, law enforcement identified the torso as belonging to Jane Doe No. 1, later confirmed as an escort named Shannon Gilbert, who had disappeared after contacting Beverly Richards, her friend and fellow escort, to ask for a ride after a strange experience with a client. Shannon's disappearance in May 2010 had prompted her mother to plead publicly for help, unaware that her daughter lay only miles away, hidden in plain sight. Although Shannon's case is complicated by conflicting evidence and remains officially listed as a non-homicide, the search that followed led to the grim discoveries of 6 additional bodies between March 2010 and April 2011. At Gilgo Beach itself, an area known more for picnics and scenic views than violence, investigators found the remains of 2 young women dubbed Jane Doe No. 3 and Jane Doe No. 4 in late March 2010. One was wrapped in a green plastic container. The other lay on a makeshift stretcher of black garbage bags. Neither had been reported missing. Over the next few weeks, 4 more bodies appeared along Ocean Parkway, a 15-mile stretch of roadway connecting several beach communities. Detectives recovered torsos, limbs, and remnants meticulously placed and, in at least one case, concealed in plastic bags. It was clear that a single, calculated killer was at work, one who took extreme care to hide evidence and exploit remote pockets along the dunes. By summer 2010, Suffolk County Police had formed a multi-agency task force. Crime scene analysts examined the pattern of burial sites, noting that every location was near a well-traveled road, but still secluded enough to avoid witnesses. They believed the killer was familiar with the area, someone who could navigate sandy dunes under cover of darkness. The forensic team cataloged every shred of evidence, matching fragments of fabric, scrapings of soil and vegetation, and grim details of each victim's injuries. Although time and tide had taken their toll, forensic anthropologists could still estimate age ranges and racial backgrounds. Victim number 3 was described as a small woman, likely between 19 and 24, whose partial tattoo on the torso hinted at a life never publicized. Victim number 4 was older, perhaps in her mid-20s, with dental records later confirming she was 27-year-old Maureen Brainerd Barnes from New Orleans, living in New York at the time of her death. The victims shared commonalities. Most were young, petite, and involved in sex work, or someone with no immediate family ties to report them missing. In each case, the spine and other remains showed signs of brutal violence, stab wounds, blunt force trauma, or combinations thereof. Yet the killer left no fingerprints. He used minimal DNA-exposing implements, trash bags, plastic sheeting, perhaps surgical gloves, and carefully transported his victims. Investigators pored over credit card records, phone logs, and truck rental databases. They staked out motels, canvassed local hotels asking for suspicious guests, and poured through thousands of digital records. By April 2011, with 6 bodies identified and 2 more linked to the same pattern, police believed that 4 additional victims from earlier years, dating back to 2000, might also be tied to the Gilgo Beach serial killings. These included 24-year-old Valerie Mack from Philadelphia, found in October 2000, 26-year-old Amber Costello, found in June 2007, and Jessica Taylor, whose remains were discovered in July 2003. In each instance, the bodies were dismembered, suggesting the killer honed consistent methods over a decade. Yet the lack of a central suspect or even a clear geographic profile left the community in a state of perpetual dread. Victim families relied on media coverage to keep their loved ones in public awareness. Jessica's mother, Linda Taylor, appeared on 48 Hours in March 2011, begging for information. Amber's father, Maurice Costello, who had traveled from his job in Philadelphia the day Amber disappeared, cried on camera. Social media groups formed to share tips, with volunteers printing flyers and scouring local parks. The public's fascination with the Long Island serial killer nickname fueled clickbait headlines, which often obscured the raw humanity behind each photo: a student, a mother, a daughter, a friend. Despite the endless swirl of rumors, ranging from mafia involvement to dark web networks, the investigation plodded forward methodically. In December 2015, Suffolk County Police released a facial reconstruction of a victim previously known only as Beth Doe. They hoped a composite drawing would jog memories. In March 2017, detectives unveiled the reconstruction of Peaches, the nickname given to a woman found partly clad in a peach-patterned blanket. Finally, in June 2020, long after initial discoveries, Beth Doe was identified as Valerie Mack, whose adoption history had complicated her missing person reports. That breakthrough rekindled hope for more answers. In July 2022, after years of cold trails, authorities announced the arrest of a suspect, Rex Heuermann, a 61-year-old architect from Massapequa Park who lived in a beachfront community near Gilgo. Heuermann, married for more than 30 years and father to 3 adult children, had appeared outwardly unremarkable. He had never been arrested for violence. Investigators said they zeroed in on him through a combination of CCTV evidence and exhaustive cell phone records. In the spring of 2022, forensic examiners found a strand of the victim's hair on duct tape in his home, matched via DNA to multiple victims. Additionally, they discovered his cell phone pinged repeatedly near 3 Village Road, where remains were later found, just hours before a victim's body was located. Though the case dated back decades, modern forensic techniques finally provided a breakthrough. Investigators retrieved pizza crust and beverage bottles from his trash, performed DNA testing, and linked genetic material to 3 victims. Court filings revealed that Heuermann had ordered a specific type of knife online, one sporting a serrated edge, days before one victim disappeared. Once confronted with this evidence, Heuermann was arrested at his home on July 14, 2022, and charged with 7 counts of first-degree murder. His initial court appearances were overshadowed by media tents parked outside the Suffolk County Courthouse. Reporters described a man with a salt and pepper beard, clad in conservative gray slacks and a freshly pressed blazer, nervous yet composed. He entered a plea of not guilty to all charges through his attorney. Under New York state law, the prosecution had to establish not only that he killed these women, but also that he showed deliberate intent. The defense immediately filed motions to exclude certain DNA evidence, arguing chain of custody errors and contamination. Meanwhile, the families of 6 victims watched behind a protective screen, clinging to the belief that justice was finally within reach. In early 2023, the pretrial hearings began. The judge denied the defense's request to split the charges, insisting that a joint trial was necessary due to the striking similarities in modus operandi and geographic location. The defense then attacked the DNA findings, labeling them as junk science and demanding independent reviews. But expert witnesses, geneticists, and forensic analysts testified that the samples met rigorous lab standards, explaining how tiny hair fragments or trace tissue could yield conclusive matches. The judge's rulings in mid-2023 largely favored the prosecution. Most DNA evidence would be admissible, and surveillance footage showing Heuermann near the victim dump sites would be allowed. As of summer 2025, the trial date remains unset, but many expect proceedings to begin before year's end. Prosecutors have filed a notice indicating their intent to seek the maximum penalty, life without parole, should Heuermann be convicted. New York State no longer carries the death penalty, but the gruesome nature of these crimes and the prolonged pain inflicted on families make a life sentence all but certain. Jury selection, when it finally arrives, will be guarded by tight security. Potential jurors will be asked about their beliefs regarding capital punishment, DNA reliability, and exposure to pretrial publicity. Now, let us turn to the individual stories of 4 women whose lives ended far too soon. First, there was Amber Costello. She was 24 in January 2007, when she stopped at a Long Island train station, intending to return home to Syracuse after visiting friends. Surveillance footage captured her carrying a black purse and a bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken, her laughter filling the quiet platform. The next day, her friends noticed she had missed a dinner date. It took 6 months before her dismembered remains were found, dumped on a patch of dirt near Highway 97. Amber's family, her mother patrolling news stations, her 2 younger sisters clinging to childhood photos, never gave up hope that someone would pay. They will be in the courtroom when justice finally speaks. Next was Maureen Brainerd Barnes, in her late 20s, originally from New Orleans. She had attended yearbook camp at Syracuse University in 2005, but struggled to find steady work afterward. In early 2010, she answered an ad to work as an escort on Long Island. On March 20 of that year, her mother spoke with her on the phone, unusually hearing a male voice in the background. After that call, all contact ceased. 6 days later, her torso was discovered at Gilgo Beach. Maureen's father, a retired postal worker, told reporters, "Maureen was smart, funny, she deserved so much more." The family's plea for information remained heartfelt, even as years wore on. The third woman, known for years only as Peaches, remained unidentified until April 2025. The media dubbed her Peaches because her torso was wrapped in a peach-patterned blanket when it was discovered at Jones Beach State Park in 1997, long before the Gilgo Beach dumping ground emerged. It took 28 years for forensic genealogy to connect her to Tanya Jackson, born in 1970, an Army veteran who enlisted in the early 1990s and later moved to Brooklyn. With this identification, investigators could finally trace Tanya's last steps. She left a halfway house where she was staying and vanished from the subway map. Her family, estranged for decades, was able to attend a memorial service in June 2025, closing a chapter of sorrow. Lastly, Jessica Taylor's story wove through Washington, D.C. and Manhattan. 23 when she disappeared in July 2003, she was found 4 days later, her torso wrapped in black plastic, and left near scrap wood on a dirt road in Manorville. Tooth fragments and a small tattoo allowed positive identification that autumn. Jessica's mother, a schoolteacher, described her daughter as a bright spark who lit up every room. She noted that Jessica had confided in her about someone making her uncomfortable at a bus terminal but, like so many victims, did not press charges out of fear. For years, the family held vigils, hoping someone, anyone, would step forward. As of April 2025, Rex Heuermann is in custody at Riverhead Correctional Facility, a maximum security prison on eastern Long Island. He has not publicly spoken about his alleged crimes. During pre-trial hearings, his legal team emphasized that the DNA evidence, while compelling, came from traces that could be contaminated. They also pointed to the absence of eyewitnesses. Prosecutors counter that such defense tactics are expected when a case relies on decades-old remains and modern forensic breakthroughs rather than eyewitness testimony. The judge ruled that he would allow, under strict supervision, video recordings of Heuermann purchasing a specialized hunting knife at a local sporting goods store in 2010. Surveillance footage, matched with digital receipts, ties him directly to a weapon similar to those used on the victims. In the courtroom, the prosecution will present a carefully constructed timeline. Heuermann's cell phone pinged repeatedly near dumping sites, trash pulled from his home showed victims' DNA, and his SUV's mud tracks matched the sandy composition found at Ocean Parkway dune sites. Defense experts will argue that cell tower data can be deceiving and that DNA on pizza crust might have been transferred through innocent means. Calls from Heuermann to his wife on the night of one victim's disappearance will be scrutinized for tone and content, each pause potentially loaded with significance. Behind every legal motion are families grappling with grief. The Costello family set up a scholarship fund in memory of Amber at Syracuse University, aiming to support students who showed kindness to all. Maureen's parents returned to New Orleans in 2012 after rebuilding their lives, but they vow to attend every day of Heuermann's trial. Tanya Jackson's family continues to advocate for the Kentucky-based nonprofit that funds DNA testing for historical cases, believing that every unidentified victim deserves a name. Jessica's mother, now retired, volunteers with missing persons networks, hoping no family ever endures the same painful wait for answers. The broader community of Long Island has never been the same. Homeowners living near Ocean Parkway report suspicion each time a stranger pulls off the road after sundown. Local real estate agents have reluctantly acknowledged that the serial killer stigma still lingers, even though tourism and beachfront property values recovered over time. Local law enforcement, previously criticized for slow progress in early years, now touts its adoption of cutting-edge technology, forensic genealogy, advanced cell tower mapping, and integrated digital databases shared among agencies statewide. Campus safety protocols at Stony Brook University and SUNY Purchase were updated to include late-night escort services after students protested lack of lighting along discount apartments near rail lines. But most residents simply want closure. At a community vigil held in Bethpage State Park in November 2022, on the 12th anniversary of the first official discovery, families and strangers gathered quietly as candles flickered in the wind. A group of elderly women from a local church choir sang a cappella, their voices carrying across the fields. For a moment, the roar of traffic and the bustle of city life felt distant, and the simple act of remembering bridged years of anguish. Now, as we approach the trial, the nation watches. Documentaries by HBO and Netflix plan multi-episode series. True crime podcasts record episodes on location in Long Island. Defense law podcasts dissect every motion filed and nightly news outlets promise blow-by-blow coverage. Yet, for many women over 50, mothers, grandmothers, aunts, and community volunteers, it is not a spectacle. It is a painful reminder of a world where vulnerability and violence can collide, leaving the most innocent unprotected. If you feel moved by these stories, please share your own experiences or words of support in the comments below. Your messages will remind victims' families that their loved ones are not forgotten. Click subscribe and ring the notification bell. When jury selection begins, we will deliver updates straight to you. Always respectful, always fact-checked. Together, we honor the lives of Megan, Maureen, Amber, Tanya, Jessica, and all those whose names we may never know. Your engagement helps shape a YouTube community where compassionate, truthful storytelling prevails. Thank you. We owe it to the victims. Behind every statistic is a daughter, a sister, a friend. We owe it to ourselves, to our own children and grandchildren, to pay attention, ask questions, and demand that justice be more than a distant promise. The Gilgo Beach murders remind us that darkness can exist even in familiar places. Yet, with each new breakthrough, each courageous testimony, the light of accountability shines brighter. In the months ahead, when you hear Gilgo Beach serial killings on the evening news, I hope you will recall the courage of those who never gave up. I hope you will remember the tenacity of detectives who sifted through decades of evidence. I hope you will honor the resilience of families who refuse to let their loved ones fade into anonymity. And I hope you will feel, as I do, that our shared humanity, our collective insistence on justice, remains the most powerful force against senseless violence. Stroll down the beach at sunset. Imagine the footprints left in the sand, one set after another. Happy families, children playing, friends gathering. Beneath that beauty, we recall the shadows that once lingered. We cannot undo the past, but we can shape a future where every victim is remembered, every family supported, and every community fortified against the unseen dangers that still roam our world. Thank you for listening. Stay informed, stay compassionate, and I will see you in our next chapter of Seeking Truth and Justice. Brandon Boudreaux eased his Tesla into the driveway of his new rental home when the back window of a dark Jeep flung outward, a rifle barrel flashed, and tempered glass exploded across the passenger seat beside him. The bullet missed his skull by less than the width of a fingernail. It was October 2nd, 2019, a warm weekday in Gilbert, Arizona. Brandon, a 33-year-old insurance executive and father of 4, had moved here only 16 days earlier after a fractious divorce from Melanie Boudreaux. The soft hum of his garage door opener vanished beneath the concussion of gunfire. Adrenaline took control. He slammed the accelerator, skidded into the street, dialed 911, and tried not to look at the spiderweb of glass that had nearly become his epitaph. Detectives soon learned Brandon's life was drama-free, debt-free, and enemy-free, except for 2 names: his former sister-in-law, Lori Vallow Daybell, and her brother Alex Cox. Brandon once admired Lori's generosity and charisma, but something had shifted. Lori now preached that certain people were dark spirits wearing human skin, and she insisted Brandon was one of them. Weeks later, neighborhood cameras recorded the same Jeep with Texas plates circling Brandon's cul-de-sac. That Jeep belonged to Lori. Investigators found aftermarket tint, spare tire removed for interior space, and a rear latch filed so the window could swing outward in silence. The morning after the attack, detectives canvassed every driveway. A neighbor's security clip showed the Jeep prowling twice at midnight. DMV files tied the plate to Lori, contradicting her claim that she had sold the vehicle months earlier. Paint flakes in Brandon's shattered window exactly matched the Jeep's tailgate. By winter, the case appeared stalled, until Lori's private life erupted across national headlines. In November 2019, her 2 youngest children vanished. In June 2020, their remains were found buried on Chad Daybell's Idaho property. Lori and Chad married on a Hawaiian beach, while the search still raged. Extradited to Idaho in 2020, Lori cycled through psychiatric holds and self-written motions. May 2023 ended in conviction for murdering both children and conspiring in the death of Chad's first wife, Tammy Daybell. Arizona waited. In January 2025, a grand jury finally unsealed 2 indictments: conspiracy to murder her 4th husband, Charles Vallow, and conspiracy to murder Brandon Boudreaux. Public intrigue soared. Reddit threads refreshed by the minute, live streamers camped outside courthouses, and hashtag Doomsday Mom trended alongside celebrity divorces. Ticket scalpers allegedly sold handwritten courtroom notes for $50 each. Analysts debated Lori's decision to act as her own attorney. Podcasters called it tactical suicide. Inside Superior Court, the atmosphere swung between precise testimony and surreal digression. Lori cross-examined a forensic analyst about spiritual light readings on ballistic glass. The analyst replied that photons carry no demons. Clip-heavy social posts racked up millions of views overnight. The real pivot arrived in December 2024, when technicians cracked a forgotten burner phone linked to Lori and Alex. In its cache, they found an unsent draft. Window done, 45, cold, be at 1400. Investigators read it as a checklist. Jeep window modified, 45 caliber weapon loaded, Brandon's address confirmed. GPS data showed the phone loitered 1 block from Brandon's driveway at 2:39 p.m., the minute of the shot. The finding obliterated Lori's staple defense that she was 1,000 miles away in Idaho. Momentum snowballed. Alex's search history included the query, trajectory rifle window SUV, 2 days before the ambush. A Flagstaff gas station receipt logged Alex's loyalty card 90 minutes after the shooting, placing him on Interstate 17 headed north. Each breadcrumb tightened the noose. June 5, 2025 opened with Lori wheeling into court, claiming sudden illness. Judge Justin Bareski ordered proceedings to continue. Prosecutor Trina Kay displayed a 3D rendering of Brandon's Tesla riddled with virtual bullet paths. The nearest line stopped 3 inches from the driver's carotid artery. Jurors inhaled as if the glass still hung in the air. Lori's self-delivered opening wandered through biblical parables of conspiracy. Objections reigned until the judge reminded her that an opening statement is not a sermon. Brandon took the stand. In plain, measured tones, he relived the muzzle flash and the months of insomnia that followed. He explained how Lori's theology of cast-off spirits had convinced Milani their relatives were possessed. How that belief system reduced human life to a spiritual scorecard. Digital forensics agents overlaid cell tower pings with traffic cam snapshots. The Jeep creeping along Gilbert Road at exactly the moments Brandon's garage door opened and closed. Another detective outlined the Jeep modifications. Rear seat removed, tinted glass popped loose from the hinges, latch disabled. A ballistics expert confirmed the bullet fragment from Brandon's driveway matched test rounds fired from Alex Cox's rifle months earlier. Though she is already serving triple life terms in Idaho, Arizona's verdict still matters. If Idaho's conviction is ever overturned on procedural grounds, a fresh life sentence here would close the escape hatch. Courtroom whispers grew louder when the state referenced new digital evidence, still under seal, rumored dashcam footage from Alex's garage test-firing the rifle. Defense argued the clip was irrelevant. Prosecutors insisted it proved premeditation. Proceedings paused for the weekend, but the story marched on outside. True crime channels dissected Lori's handwritten notes, 43 scripture citations by lunch break. TikTok creators analyzed her pastel blouses against jailhouse psychology. Viewers devoured every motion, every eye roll, every raised objection. The trial resumes tomorrow, yet one encrypted file, cataloged by investigators as jjjeepcam.bin, remains sealed on a forensic server. Prosecutors claim its 15 minutes of video show the final rehearsal before the ambush. The defense insists it is a meaningless blur. Until that file plays or stays forever locked, one question drifts through the Arizona heat. How close did darkness come to finishing the job it started? All Australian town should have ended with dessert. Instead, the host's ex-husband and asking how a single beef Wellington. Late July 29, 2020 was gentle. The company familiar Patterson, both 70, and Heather's husband, inside the neat brick house of Erin Pook, who still signed her emails. Inside, the dining room's pastry. Erin explaining that today's beef special, porcini, home for. No one knew that the thin bralet and duxelles looked to phalloides. Death by a human liver in 48 hours. Doctors at Melbourne's Oscal battles for life. Spiraled into organ failure, dialysis. Local hoping for leftovers was scrubbed, and the compost. When detectives asked where the mushroom answered vaguely, maybe the roadside vendor. At first, the story sounded like. Then inconsistent hospital toxicology confirmed signature poison of death caps. Identifying them are small. The smaller still. Investigators found a message sent hours pray. We think Erin initial police interview lasted 3. She trembled. She insisted, yet she admitted 2 unsguarded the food dehydrator used night the victims fell sick. Hours before telling doctors any Detective Sergeant James Hargreave, hostess, she seemed audience. Public fact lines dubbed the case Beef Crime subreddits posted amateur TV replayed Erin's shakes loops. In November, Tina Carlton issued an unprecedented deaths consistent with deloides administered by a person. The homicide squad took formal charged in November 2024 and one of attempted murder. Trial date, April 20. Morwell Supreme Court. Room overflowed. Bloggers handwritten notes. Prosecutes a woman who saw divorce, standing, then chose mushroom weapon. The defense took, trapped by coincidence in trial, the prosecution unveiled Erin's deleted notes app. The line sat pastry and beef fillet. To lure guests by claiming wanted, One last lunch. Erin denied ever telling anyone. Neighbors swore under oath she never existed. Through encrypted Google history, liver failure timeline. Erin's face drained, aligned with shopping receipt. But the sharpest twit. Police chemists read the discarded dehydrators heating microscopic fragments found in composition matched. Same mushrooms that killed her in gasped. One alternate faint. Day 28, 2025. Array of testimony. Hair tied back previous session. Wiping fingerprints from the dehydrator smelled bad. She mushroom mistake, but claimed it was broke. The Crown read it. Time-stamped bottle shop showed Erin Blanc at 10:13 a.m. Board with the beef Wellington. Purchased porcini labeled jars at a farm stand 20 kilometers, warning her. These aren't table. Ecologist Dr. Yvette Mango presented like a cliff face. Neutralize amatoxins. Pastry and heat only hide their bite. Anya Co. flagged the possibility. Maybe Erin stored store-bought caps. Maybe a victim. She called a hobby forager who occasionally share patches with yet under redirect, the crouched patch, harvested bare wheat species nearby. Ian Willer appeared via video. He told jurors, Erin, she stood behind me, watching at 8. Court reporters, by June 12th, the Crown rested. Closing arguments began. A murmur. You will decide or calculated homicide. The garbage bin scrubbed spotless. Phone searches. The cancer tip. Defense urged no eyewitness saw Erin pick prove which mushroom slice came. Tragedy is not necessarily crime. Drew, the judge sealed 1Q. Patterson journal pages of Erin's private diary. Its contents remain suppressed by that chronicles sleepless nights and entries ending. I won't. Verdict could arrive within dict. Erin Patterson faces harshest penalty under Victorian law. The case joins Australia's histories. Somewhere in the queue, locked until the judge irrelevant. Contrition, calculator, may answer the question. Was it a careless, innocent-looking murder weapon ever A quiet Sunday